Hello everybody and welcome to Homestead for a Living. I'm out here in our commercial market garden spot on our property, and I wanted to make a quick video about how you can gain a lot of the food that you need from the margins of a commercial market garden system. So we have a very small patch here that we're doing a market garden on. Doesn't look like much right now, but there's a lot of food hidden in here. And where I'm standing right here is our turnip greens bed. And you can see they're starting to really do well. And you can also see there's a whole lot of overcrowding. And the reason for that is that seeds are really cheap, especially turnip green seeds. I mean, you can buy them in big packs intended for deer fields and they grow just fine. And so what we do is when we cleared this area, we had to do some traditional tilling just because we haven't really got a no-till system going over here yet. And as a result, we knew we'd get a lot of weeds popping up. So we decided let's just replace the weeds with whatever we can. So we seeded the turnip greens really super heavily. You can see that. It's all turnip greens in there, just packed in tight together. Because the idea is, you know what, we're going to have to weed something. Why don't we just go ahead and weed turnip greens as we go and thin them out constantly? So that way, every time we weed, we're getting a yield. And so none of these turnip greens are quite ready for sale yet, but they're getting close. As you can see, some of them are starting to get pretty big there. And so in the meantime, every, a couple of times every week, I have to come out and I need to start thinning these so that they can grow big like that. If they stay overcrowded, they're not going to do very well. And so I come out and I weed out the little baby starts. And what they are is really essentially microgreens, which are some of the most nutritious and delicious things that you can possibly put in your body. People spend a lot of money on microgreens, but we get them for free every day while also keeping the weeds out of a garden and maintaining our commercial crop right here. So we get big just fistfuls of this stuff. We kill two birds with one stone. I guess we call that stacking functions in permaculture. And so as it goes, it gets a little bit easier because they get a little bit bigger and easier to pull out. Initially, when they're really small, I don't always save those microgreens. That's a lot of work. I just, yank them out and toss them on the bed. I'm a little less careful then. But what this also does is it gives us harvest really early in the year. I mean, we were eating microgreens, I think, probably as early as February. We started some of these really early, and we had totes over them to keep them warm. And so we get that first initial super healthy harvest in the coldest time of the year when it's really hard to come by fresh food. And that's just a margin. That's just a little extra bumper that comes from the commercial production on our market garden farm. And there's a lot of ways you can do that when you start thinking that way. Because when you're doing a market garden farm, especially in a natural way, you're going to have a lot of ugly food. You're going to have a lot of, maybe a tomato that got a bite taken out of it on one side by an insect, but the rest of the tomato is absolutely fine. You can't sell it, but it's good food. And so the way we're kind of developing our own system for living and for commercial production is that whatever is maybe not quite as pretty, but just as healthy and just as good a food, that goes into our home, and we'll turn that into food. And then we'll sell the better looking things. And that really takes the pressure off of us. We no longer have to use pesticides and chemicals and all of this work and intervention in order to create tons of perfect food. We just grow lots of food the laziest way we possibly can. And then, if it's not totally pretty, if it gets a bug taking a bite out of it, or if it's a little yellowish instead of green, or it's just not looking amazing, we can eat that, or we can give it to our animals as well and really get this whole system going where absolutely nothing is wasted. There's not a drop of our field that doesn't become something useful. You can see that starting in here. We sowed cover crops in this area, cover crops ranging from clover to turnip, and as those pop up, we use those in our animal systems and for ourselves as well. And I know a lot of farmers that do that locally, that are starting to switch to cover crops. They'll also eat the surplus off of those cover crops. That could be peas. Sometimes a lot of different nitrogen fixers are edible. So I could go on and on about it because there's an indefinite number of ways you could do that. There's so many ways you could harvest the surplus off of your crop. That's not quite good for commercial production. I can't realistically harvest microgreens this way by thinning my turnip greens. That's far too much labor to sell, but it's not too much labor for me to get a really good, delicious meal out of it. I'm going to go eat this for breakfast, and it's going to be absolutely amazing, and it's going to be a huge boon to my health. So this kind of integrated system really makes market garden farming way more possible and accessible to somebody who's really busy, or to somebody who doesn't have much land, or somebody who doesn't have a lot of financial resources, because every margin is getting used, every little bit of space and production is getting used, and we're killing lots of birds with one stone. We're stacking those functions and getting a lot of things done with every action we take on the farm. So hopefully that jogs some useful ideas in everybody's mind and how to get the most out of their space and out of their time and out of their money. In the meantime, y'all stay safe, be well, and happy homesteading.